All right, periscope is good. Okay, I assume everything is going well. Hello, how are you? Thank you for waiting.
Oh, headphones.
Yeah, we just, I think we just sanitized those. We've got some wipes anyway. So thank you for waiting. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
So, yeah, what we do here is like to chat with people about whatever they want to talk about. Did you want to talk about one of those topics or something you want to bring up yourself?
Actually, I'm good on any one of those. Well, most of those anyway.
Good on any one of those? Which one do you have the most strong opinion about, one way or the other?
Well, I actually have a good opinion on the one that is religion in schools.
Religion in schools. That's an interesting one. All right. So let me make sure everything's good here. Do you mind if we record and stream and stuff? Is that right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And what was your first name?
Devin.
Devin, D-E-V-I-N. Gotcha. My name is Reid. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah, you did. So cool. Do you come to this park area often?
Yeah, this is kind of one of our regular walks.
I love it here. This is the first time I've been here. Dahlia and I usually go out to various places in LA, but now we're visiting here for today. I'm loving it so far. So you wanted to talk about, should we teach religion in schools? Is that the question?
That was the question posed.
Want to talk about that?
So I guess to answer the question, you have to kind of define the purpose of the question to begin with. Mm-hmm. And there's two directions you can really take with that question. One being, should we teach religion in terms of, like, should we teach basic tenets of religion as breadth of knowledge base, or should we indoctrinate? So two different directions on the same question.
Yeah, religion seems too broad to really talk about. So you mentioned if we specify it to like teaching specific, tenets of a certain religion or something else. What are our options here for defining religion?
And we can take both directions. Actually, one of them pretty quickly, and then the other one a little less so.
Sure.
So my personal view is that in public schools, and I'm emphasizing the phrase public schools, as opposed to parochial specifically, there is a place for teaching religion in general in schools, and that place is social studies.
Social studies.
Now, there's the whole other debate of like, does this then infer or somehow impede on individual rights or what have you? I would say no, because in teaching history specifically and social sciences in general, when you're teaching concepts of history, it isn't just dates, times, places of dead people. It's motivations for actions and processes that develop and inform our life now. So how could you possibly know the motivations of the Crusades if you don't know the basic principles of Christianity and the basic principles of Islam? Mm-hmm. It's impossible. I mean, you could at least understand that, there was a conflict here, but you don't know what the conflict even was.
Right.
And you also wouldn't understand the beauty of things like the architecture we're sitting right here right now, is that a lot of this is Western European, more specifically Spanish based, and it has Moorish origins because of Arabic invasions of Iberia.
Oh, wow.
So layers and layers and layers and layers of things you just would not know about why a motivation occurred in a particular historical event, and considering how much difficulty in specifically European history is based on religion or secularism. I mean, the entire 100 Years' War, for example, is the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism. So how do you not understand that they fought a war for a century that tore an entire continent apart?
For this branch of the question, it's like keeping it into history, social studies, for that type of religion teaching in schools.
And even then, if you think about the basis of a lot of religions, like if you think about Genesis, for example, well, what is it? It's a creation myth. Well, we teach Native American creation myths in 4th grade as part of a history of local history. So the basics of how religious philosophy informs culture is important to still know, and I would argue that its place in school, even public school, is in a social science perspective.
Yeah, so I think the more interesting path for this question is like, severing off the science versus humanities version of this question.
Exactly.
Should any part of science be influenced by religion and start teaching religion in those types of areas?
That's where you start changing the question into a fundamental question of what is the basis of our society, and specifically American society, as opposed to any other country we're talking about. Are we in fact a secular society, or are we not?
Right.
And that's a whole other rabbit hole, but let's assume for a second that we are not a secular society, as some would assume. And then in that case, it still comes back to the basic premise of, okay, if we're not a secular society and we are a quote unquote specifically Christian society, so then what denomination is supreme here?
Yeah, which version of
exactly
Christianity are we talking about?
And that's when you still go down that same rabbit hole of, okay, now that we're defining, if we are not in fact a secular society, then what non-secular society are we?
Okay.
And that's a whole other long one.
That's a whole other long one.
But if we are a secular society, then that inherent separation where science teaches one thing, humanities may not necessarily disagree with it, but that difference is irrelevant because you're teaching philosophy and philosophical thought as opposed to a presentation of this is truth.
Right, right. So for the science portion of this, where's your current confidence that we should be teaching anything about from religion in the science courses? Like if all the way to the right is yes, we should, or all the way
Absolutely
to the left is
not.
no? Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right. So where is something where you would be a version of this question where it would be less certain one way or the other? Maybe you're more not sure.
I lean directly on, they do have a place, but the place is in the two separate disciplines.
More in the grand humanities.
More in the grand
Social
humanities.
studies, history, philosophy.
Exactly. Like creationism may have a place. I would say that that perspective is best served in the humanities as opposed to science, because science isn't trying to solve the conjecture of philosophical thought. It's trying to solve theory of empirical evidence.
So interesting way we could go down. Does theology belong into like secular public school philosophy departments? I guess that's the only thing I would wonder about.
In a K-12 setting, I'd say that'd be just a bit much.
Yeah, this would be like university public schools. Yeah.
I don't see why not. I don't see why not. I mean, I don't see why teaching theological philosophy shouldn't be in some way included or offered in some way. And speaking purely as someone who did in fact go to a humanities school and does have a degree in history, well, no, theology was very much a part of my collegiate education.
Okay.
Because you can't really talk about the Crusades without talking about theology.
Yeah, there's the split again of like the history of like these people believe this for these reasons and that causes actions.
Yeah.
Although our current understanding of the world and ethics, should they be influenced? Should that field of study be promoted and cultivated in our public universities?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I don't see why not. If you distill every great religion down to its barest nubs, it comes back to the basic ethos of do no harm and don't be a dick. And so if you extrapolate anything else, then you're talking about differences of philosophical thought, and then introduction of deity and specific, ritualistic aspects of it. But the fundamental basis of all religious and I would even say ethical thought is the concept of basically do no harm.
Basically do no harm. Gotcha. All right. So what's your current confidence about the theology in public universities? If same scale, if all the way to the right is yes, all the way to the left is no. Same confidence, like absolutely yes, that we should have that?
I see no reason why it shouldn't be offered. Absolutely yes. Okay.
What hypothetically could we learn or find out, or what could happen to make us shift our confidence the other way even slightly? I don't just a hypothetical think about it.
Again, it comes back to the motives behind the presentation of the material. And it still comes back from a religious perspective is, are you educating from a philosophical perspective, or are you indoctrinating?
Yeah.
Is your goal to present as this is absolute truth and your grade depends on you becoming converted? Or does your grade depend on me giving you an explanation of what I'm presenting here and you regurgitating back in a test case?
Yeah, if we had these like certain set of schools where we had like a survey of people's religious beliefs at the beginning of the school, but then like after school or 5 years later, they're like all Christian. If that started happening at these set of schools, should that be any would that
again,
matter?
it's the inherent basis of why it's being presented. Now, if it follows that religious theology is taught in schools and people become converted, I don't see that as an inherent harm if that was ancillary to the fact that theology was presented.
Ancillary? What do you mean by that?
Goes along with where if that kind of conversion, like if what you're saying, if we're going with the hypothetical that all of a sudden we start seeing mass changes and upticks of students being influenced to join one particular denomination or whatever, if the intention was to present information and people take this into their own hearts and minds as you do in an educated setting and decide this applies to me, I want this, then there is no harm. If the intention in a public school setting at any level for that individual is to indoctrinate, I would actually say that would actually violate the principle of it being a public institution.
Public, therefore secular, therefore
exactly
not that type of thing.
And I wouldn't even go so far as to say public, therefore secular. Public, therefore, does not promote one specific.
Okay.
At least in terms of how it's defined in the First Amendment. That the United States government, the Constitution, individual states do not support or promote one specific faith.
Yeah. And secular is not like no religion, but like plurality of views.
Exactly.
Everything is on the table. Nothing specific, exclusively.
Exactly.
All right. Any questions I could ask to make us think about more of this question?
Go right ahead.
What is a good question that we could ask of ourselves about this?
So I have an interesting relationship with this question in that I was a history major in college. My original intention was to go to law school and realized that was a horrible mistake. I'm an insurance broker, took a break for a while, went back to school to do a teaching credential, and I wanted to teach social studies. And I student taught in an area where there were certain elements of the population who specifically determined that they did not want any discussion of Islam to be presented to their children because they felt it violated their Christian beliefs. Now, in the curriculum, in both state standards and just the general curriculum, it's not promoting Islam, it's simply explaining this is why in Europe, we fought 1,000 years of warfare, almost 1,000 years of warfare, and we are still having issues with the Middle East, is because these are the differences between these two faiths that have similar origins. But it was perceived as though any discussion thereof would be considered indoctrination. The intent was not indoctrination. The intent was information.
Right. So that's the issue. It's like whenever we're trying to teach real history and like the real views of real people in the past, they had ideas, and this idea includes religions, and this needs to be known for people to grow up well educated.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I think I understand your position. I think we thought about things that anything that could possibly change our minds about it. We talked about potential schools indoctrinating people. I think that's one thing. Anything else about this?
I think it really just comes back to the whole concept of intent. And like what happens in a parochial school setting or a private school setting, these are not public institutions. In my view, it would be a shame if they did divorce that information from the curriculum just because of my own belief, but they're not a public school setting. So again, it's intention and the modality in which it's presented.
Gotcha. All right. Appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And we might be back here in a month or so. If you see us again for some reason, you can pick one of these puzzle pieces, squishy puzzle pieces, and if you see us again, you can get another color if you want, and complete the set with like multiple conversations about various things if you want to.
Why not? Just grab one.
Yeah, feel free to take a color, whichever one you like. That was good though. Thank you. And thanks again for waiting.
Thank you.
Sure.
Don't mind if you ever want to have some fun, actually read the oath of office.
Okay. You want to be up? You go ahead.